Hello, everybody, from wherever you are all around the world. Welcome to another episode of the Coaching Outdoors podcast. Today we have a lovely, lovely guest all the way from Wales. So I'm up in Scotland. Our guest is in Wales, and Anna is in England. So we're very kind of British Isles focused today. So I'd like to introduce you to Leah Davies, who is an outdoor coach and also focuses in the area of grief, which is why we're really interested to talk to her today. So Leah, please could you introduce yourself to our guests?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me both. Yeah, I'm Leah Davies, and I'm in Cardiff in South Wales. And I'm a somatic life coach. So I work very much in a sort of body-oriented way. And I support people to bring their hearts, their minds, their bodies into the present so that they can really become more themselves, really, so they can sort of embody themselves and come back to their true nature. And I do that in a variety of different ways. So I take people outdoors on one-to-one coaching sessions. I run groups and events. And yeah, in the last year or so, I've started offering grief walks and grief in nature programs as well. So yeah, I've got lots of different things going on.
And totally intrigued as to how you get this blend of somatic coaching, grief, nature, how you thread the connections. And we'll come to that in a moment. But starting with a question that we ask all of our guests is, what is your earliest memory of being outdoors? And then what do you enjoy about being outside? So it's a bit of a two-parter, but yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about this. As a child, I don't think I was particularly outdoorsy. Like, I don't have memories of being in forests or climbing trees or anything like that. But we did have quite a big garden, and we had a dog. And I would always be in the garden playing with the dog. And I was always interested in, like, my dad was a big gardener. So I was always interested in, like, the seasons and the moon and, like, just that. Yeah, just intrigued by the moon and the stars and the night sky and everything. So I remember, yeah, my earliest memories would be sort of playing in the garden with the dog. Yeah. And then, yeah, why I love being outdoors. Oh, I mean, there's so many reasons. I think that my appreciation for being outdoors didn't really start until I was in my 30s, probably. I think about being a younger adult. I don't think I really, really appreciated the outdoors. But yeah, in my 30s, I joined a group, and you've had them on as guests, Fresher Fridays, where, yeah, they take people outside into nature and they run sort of wellbeing programs. And one of my friends was going on one of them, and that really ignited my passion for being outdoors. I mean, I'd run outdoors, but that was more for exercise and fresh air. But just that connection to being in the trees, and yeah, and actually slowing down enough to appreciate what nature has to offer and being part of it. I think that sort of went from there. Yeah, I just remember, and just that feeling now of, it's like I need it. It's not like I'm going outside just to enjoy it or just to see a beautiful landscape. It's almost like my body needs to do it. I need to be in nature. I need to see greenery. I need to see the horizon. I need to see the sky. Yeah, it's almost like it actually resources me. So yeah, I need to be outside. It's almost like a daily part of my life now.
I suppose as you're a somatic coach as well, you're very tuned into your own body and how you're reacting. And I think that's a lovely way to describe it, that you know, you need it. And I think a lot of people, once they start to really connect with nature, actually start to realize that. And, you know, there's lots of research out there about, you know, the body does need nature. We do, you know, we are nature. We are, you know, it is us, we are it. And realizing how much we do need it especially when we don't have it around, you know, if we're stuck in an office, four walls or whatever it might be, you know, realizing just how much your body craves that, you know, natural light, the natural sort of feeling of the air on your skin and that sort of thing. And I think Ruth and Rose would be very happy to hear that you're going on one of their Fresh Air Fridays has inspired or it sort of ignited, as you said, that love for the outdoors. So Ruth and Rose have been a previous podcast guest, and it's one of my favorite podcasts. I think we laughed, we giggled a lot through that podcast. It's absolutely brilliant. So could you share with us a little bit of your backstory then? So how did you decide to become a coach, and then how did that evolve into coaching outdoors? So yeah, a little bit of, you know, where you've come from and some of your sort of career highlights.
Yeah, so it's it's interesting because I guess I've always been a coach in some sense, because my background is I worked with people with addictions for 10 years. So I worked in a substance misuse organisation. And alongside that, I also worked in a children's home. So I worked with children that lived in a residential home, like for teenagers. And so I'd always been in that sort of support worker, helping profession role. But back in 2010, my partner and I decided to quit our jobs and go traveling. And at that point, I was still working in the substance misuse service, and they were offering life coaching training to some of the staff. So I did my first level with the ILM when I was working there. And then we went off traveling, and we went to South America and New Zealand and Australia, and it was amazing. We were away for about 8 or 9 months and just exploring different cultures and like seeing how people lived. And I didn't really have a plan when I got back. I didn't have a job to come back to. I was able to sort of pick up shifts in the children's home, but I didn't have, I never thought that I would be running a business, or that I would be running a coaching business or anything. And I got back from traveling, and the training provider that I'd done the level 1 with was offering like a second level to that. And I thought, do you know what? I may as well do it. I really enjoyed the first course. I enjoyed the coaching because it suited my style of working, even though I was in, different roles in terms of mentoring and obviously offering people guidance and advice and education. I really knew that deep down people have their own wisdom within them, and that they don't necessarily need advice. And I really like that non-directive, more guidance and support in that way. So I thought, I'm going to do the next level of the coaching qualification. And so I started by going into schools, because I'd had lots of contacts with schools. I'd worked a lot with young people through the substance misuse service. I'd gone into schools. I was the person that did like the drugs talk when you're in school. And of course, working with teenagers. And I thought, actually, I'd really like to support young people in terms of anxiety and stress and, the emotional pressures that they're under at school. So my coaching business started like that. And even then, I didn't even think of it as a business. I thought it was something, I can do that. I've got skills, I can pull them together, I can help people. And then, maybe I can earn some money from it. And I started coaching in schools, working with students and teachers and running programs. And I realized actually it was the teachers that I wanted to support even more, because I was recognizing I was going in for an hour or 2 at a time, and the teachers were the people that were with the students all day. They were the ones that were in that environment and were raising these young people, really. So from there I was working with teachers, and then I started to branch out into the community. And as I said, going on Fresh Air Fridays opened me up to that possibility of, we can work with people anywhere, we can coach people anywhere. It doesn't have to be sitting in a room or on a Zoom call. And so I became a Fresh Air Fridays facilitator, and I was a facilitator for 5 years for Fresh Air Fridays. And that really supported me to become more comfortable and more at ease with working with people outdoors, and actually seeing the benefits of that, and how more innovative and creative we can be when we're outside. So that really ignited my passion for working outdoors more.
And it's so heartening to hear the ripple effect of other people's work and how it influences and just inspires, and then you build confidence. So hearing how Ruth and Rose have influenced your work, and then how you've taken that experience on and then made it your own and stepped into your own coaching style is absolutely phenomenal. And I really think for anyone who's kind of listening, who's new to this world, who's thinking, or what if, I don't have much experience. It's a real testament to actually how you evolve and grow over months and years. And often at the beginning of the journey, you don't have a clue where you're actually going. It just kind of organically unfolds, which is exciting, but can equally be a little bit scary. So moving on to the grief part, where did the grief thread then come in, and you made the decision to focus within this area? Because it's almost a kind of going niche, like outdoors, somatic, grief. So how did those threads then come together and you decide to really focus on that?
Yeah, it's been a long journey to get to actually integrating the grief work into my work, because well, 10 years ago I suffered 2 major losses in my life. So I lost my brother and my sister around the same time, a week apart from each other. And at that point, I think that nature really became my solace. I remember I was running, and you know, as I said, at that point, I wasn't perhaps really appreciating nature that much, but I would get outdoors, I would go for a run. And I can remember running one day and stopping and just being overwhelmed to tears, really, at just, I don't know, something hit me about the ancientness of the trees that were around me, and it almost made my grief feel smaller, not insignificant, but smaller in some way. It didn't feel as big. I remember literally stopping on my tracks and seeing the trees and feeling this, yeah, perspective of these trees have been here way before I was, and before my brother and sister or anybody I know was, and that they will be here ongoing after I've left as well. And there was some sort of comfort in that. It almost just felt, I felt that connection, I think. I felt that connection to something bigger that I hadn't felt before. So at that point, I wasn't thinking about bringing grief into my work with other people at all. But I think it's always been a thread that has run through the work that I do, because I feel as though everyone that I work with, well, all of us, you know, grief is part of being human. We will all lose, you know, everything we love, we will lose. And whether that's directly through a bereavement, or whether there's a longing in us where we ache for something, you know, grief is sort of, it's always there, it's always part of our lives. And I always feel like it's underneath a lot of, how can we call them, symptoms, or people come with a problem. It might be anxiety, or it might be that they can't make a decision about something, or they might be feeling really frustrated and stuck in life. And often, I think when we get underneath that, there are usually unprocessed or unfelt sadness and loss. And so it's always been there. And for myself personally, I went to some support groups, I went to bereavement groups, and they were helpful at the time. But I started going to some grief tending circles back a couple of years ago. And it was a really different way of looking at grief. It was far more human and, how can I put it? Well, grief tending, it comes from the word like tender and gentle. So the grief isn't something to be fixed or, you know, or therapized in any way. It's almost there to just be witnessed and to be held and integrated into us. And so I started attending in these grief circles, and that just felt, more healing to me and more human, and allowed me to realize that I never have to get over my grief. It is actually part of me, and I'm willing for it to change me. And that is a shared human experience. You know, it's something that we are not meant to do alone. We're meant to do in circle, and we're meant to do outdoors. You know, we're meant to be supported by nature. So yeah, from attending those and, you know, having that experience for myself, and then learning some of the practices and the rituals that we did as part of that, I thought, yeah, I would like to actually support people directly with their grief. And so, yeah, in the past year, I've been offering the grief walks and the Grief in Nature program. Now I'm going to start. So So yeah, it was almost a natural progression. And as I say, you know, I'm 10 years on from the loss of my brother and sister, but it's only now I think that it feels like the natural next step to offer that in my work.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And the loss of your brother and sister, just and what you've then drawn from that. And yes, you carry it with you. You will carry it with you. And how can you do that so it really touches the people that you work with, and how that really translates? And it would just be interesting to go, so then how do you work one-on-one? How do you share your lived experience and then hold space for others to go through their grief? Because it can come through in so many different ways, and everyone has their own unique experience.
Yeah, so it's I think so the grief walks that I hold, people come to that with many different forms of grief. So it might be a bereavement, it might be you know, infertility, it might be a job loss, or a relationship has ended. It might be that there's a sense of like melancholy, or just something isn't quite right feeling, and nobody is under any obligation to share. Actually, it's more of a coming together in nature. We walk in silence, you know, we do some mindful walking where we connect to our senses, we orient ourselves to the environment that we're in. And then there is opportunities for people to share and walk in pairs if they want to. And then we hold a grief tending ritual within that. And that is a way for us to honour the elements and to actually use nature as a resource for people to have that felt sense, that sort of, you know, embodied experience that, yes, actually nature is holding us and is able to hold our grief as well. So we may gather, you know, around a tree, and I'll bring a bowl and some water, and we'll just collect some leaves or petals. And I bring some like translucent paper, so paper that actually dissolves in water, so people can write any messages or anything that they want to release in private. They don't share that with the group. And then we have a ceremony then where we're able to put that into the water and let it to dissolve, and we pour that back into the roots of the tree. And it's really powerful because people, I think this is something that it's like a remembering. Our body knows, you know, our ancestral body knows that this is where we belong. It feels quite natural. There's almost like that, yeah, it's a remembering, because I think that's what's missing in modern society, is we've forgotten how to grieve, and we've forgotten that it is something communal that is shared. And we don't have to do it necessarily in private. You know, we can do this in circle with the support of others, and that my loss is not only my loss, but it's shared. You know, it's shared by the community, and people really get a felt sense of that. People are moved by that. I can remember the first time I did that particular ceremony on a grief retreat, and it felt like, for me, the honouring of my brother and sister that I didn't really get to do at the funeral. Because I think, you know, I was talking to someone the other day, I think funerals are organised usually very quickly. You're not really in a place to take it all in. You're very numb at that point. And so for me, having that ceremony was a way for me to actually honour them in a way, in a place where I could feel it and I could be there and be present. And yeah, it just gives people opportunities in different ways to either honour their loss or to release something and know that they are being held by others in the group and by nature as well. So yeah, it's a really, really profound thing. It's beautiful.
Just listening to you talking, it's really it's opening up a lot of personal stuff for me as well, because I lost my parents very close together a few years ago now, and so many of the things you're saying resonate with me. You know, just even the things like the funeral, you know, my brother and my sister and I, we don't have any, my parents didn't have any brothers or sisters themselves. So it's literally just me and my brother and my sister left in our family. And because, I mean, we're very close anyway, so we're even closer now, and we shared our grief. And it's fascinating because I didn't feel the funeral was like with the funerals where, as you said, you don't really know what's going on because you're in such a world of shock and, whatever else is happening. But a few years after both my parents had passed away, we took their ashes down to a natural burial ground down in Cornwall, and that was so much more powerful for me. So it's just a hillside, and people put caskets or ashes in the ground and then plant a tree, and then it's there for life. And it's not a grave as such. It's a natural place for that to happen, and that felt, because of nature, exactly as you described it, it felt so much more powerful for me. I felt like they were at rest now rather than before. It was a funeral, and I, don't really know what, can't really remember it, weirdly, because I think my brain just goes, I don't really know what happened that day. Um, and other things that you were talking about there as well about, sharing it, and it allowing yourself to say, grief doesn't stop. You just have, it's how do you make it personal? How do you evolve with it? How do you carry it with you? And nature can be such a great way of helping you to do that. And I was just wondering if you could share any sort of examples maybe of, um, you know, some of the walks you've been on, and the kind of the way in which nature, so being outdoors and having this kind of either group walks or individual one-to-one coaching, whatever it might be, what is it that nature does, or how does it help people to have these conversations or feel these emotions that they might not be able to deal with when they're indoors or confined?
Yeah, yeah. I describe nature as, it's like my co-host. It's a facilitator of it in itself. I feel like everything has more, for me, as as a facilitator, as a coach, I feel like there's some sort of ease when I take people outdoors, that I'm not doing this on my own. It's almost like I'm in partnership with nature. The venue, the environment is hosting us together, and it feels like more of like a reciprocal thing, like a co-creation going on. So that's the first thing that I think of when I take people outdoors. And the other thing is that it's ever changing. Like, I never know what's going to happen. And I think for me as a somatic coach, somatic is about being embodied, and it's very experiential. It's very emergent. Then we're sort of tracking things as they happen. We really don't know where we're going and what's going to happen next. And so being outdoors, you just trust, you just know that something is going to happen to forward the conversation. And I can think of one lady that I took outdoors on a one-to-one, and she had retired, and she was feeling a bit stuck around what to do with her time and finding a whole new life, new chapter of her life, and having things to do. And I think it was springtime, because there was blossom and magnolia out, and we were in the park. And she stopped, and she was looking, and she was sort of getting excited about what she was seeing, the beautiful flowers and the blossom and the magnolia. And she remembered that she really enjoyed drawing, and she liked art. She liked painting and drawing. And her whole state shifted. You could see there was like an excitement, a curiosity, and a bit of playfulness came out in her. She said, oh, I could draw that. That would make such a beautiful painting. And she started to come up with ideas. And we were like, oh, okay, this is a thing, that she wanted to pursue. And that could never have happened indoors, because it's happening in the here and now. And I think people get an experience that actually changes their state. In coaching, we're about that facilitating change and transformation, and things progressing and developing. And I think that for me as a somatic coach, it's almost like I don't really have to do anything as such. It almost happens for us when we're outside in nature. And then when people get that visceral like embodied experience where they actually change state, that's a permanent change. It's not something they've thought of. It's not only cognitive. It's in their whole body, and I think that just happens so naturally and quite effortlessly in some ways when we're outside in nature.
I think that don't have to do is just such a powerful message for anybody who's listening, who's interested in maybe kind of coaching, isn't really quite sure how to go about it. Because often you can kind of get a little bit caught. Well, I don't know how to do it. What do I do? And actually, that just that trust, which you really, really hammered home there in your example, is such a big part of it. It's like taking the step just to see what emerges, and nature as a co-host as well. It's such a beautiful phrase. We've had kind of like co-coach, co-facilitator, co-host. I'm not sure we've had yet. But that was a great. And I mean, we love to get little insights or fly on the walls into your work. So any more, observations you've had of clients, or sharings that they've fed back to you. I mean, clearly confidentiality fully respected. But if there's anything else that could paint a picture, bring to life the impact of your coaching, that would be really interesting.
I think the other part of it is so particularly for the grief sessions that I run, I guess the coaching almost takes a back seat in a way. As I was just explaining, it's like the environment sort of creates that space for things to happen. And but if I think of some of the practices that I bring in during that session, so we have a 2-hour walk where we'll start off by honouring the elements. So we open with like a ceremony where we honour the directions and the elements, earth, air, fire, water, and what those can teach us about our emotions, that earth can ground us, and that water reminds us that our tears are needed, and that they are like, they're healing and they're medicine. So we start off with that, and then we walk in silence. So we'll spend sort of 5-10 minutes where people get a chance to just be free, walk at their own pace, wander around in their own, in their own thoughts, connecting to what they can see through their senses. So, from a somatic perspective, my intention with that is to bring people into a regulated state within their nervous system, so that they feel grounded and they feel safe. Yeah, so they're in that space of if we look at things through the lens of polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges, we're looking at that ventral vagal state, so which is basically our parasympathetic nervous system, the rest digest. And when people are in that state, they're able to take on new ideas and fresh perspectives, and are able to be heard and able to share and be listened to. But we also allow time for people to walk in pairs, which is optional, so giving people choices about whether they want to share or not share. And then throughout the walk, we'll stop and I will share some poetry. And I find that poetry, words can be really comforting or can resonate with people, and people can take them and interpret them in different ways. And on one of the grief walks, somebody that came along was really moved by the poem, and wanted to share that. She had her mother's funeral in a few weeks' time, and she wanted to share that at the funeral. And I just thought that was amazing, that she felt like the session had allowed her to connect to something. Like we were saying about funerals earlier, they can be really difficult. They can be really hard to do all the practicalities and the logistics and stuff. But being on that walk and hearing that poem obviously resonated with her, and she thought, yeah, actually, I want to share that with my family. And it was something that she took. And yeah, I didn't write the poem. It was something that I had heard at another ceremony that I had been to, but that had been passed on. So that's a lovely thing, that people take things from the sessions and literally integrate them into their lives.
It's lovely to hear a little bit about how your sessions unfold as well. And you've started there with your honouring of the elements, which is lovely, because I do that as well. And my husband and I had a pagan hand fasting, and we started the pagan hand fasting on honouring the elements in the north, south, east, and west. And again, it was what you're saying just really resonated with me. It's that grounding. It's that, what is it about nature that's in us? Where's the fire in us? What's our connection with water? What's our connection to the ground? Taking your shoes off and actually feeling the ground under your feet, rather than walking around in shoes, which we weren't designed to do really. So yeah, and that somatic practice, you've mentioned a couple of the concepts there. Could you share a little bit more about what that somatic practice is? Because we've had a couple of other guests who also are somatic coaches, but it would be really great to just get an idea of explain a little bit more to some of our listeners who might not have heard of it before, or who might not really know what it is, a little bit more about it, and then how you use that, how you integrate that with nature. What does nature do to help with that? You said rest and digest. How does nature, do you think, help people to get into that state? So a little bit more about somatic practices would be really useful, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I touched on one of the things. The first thing is to allow people to actually take in what's around them. So there is this, as I was saying, it's almost like, for there to be any transformation, or for there to be connection and healing, we need to be in a state to be able to receive. And so the first thing is for me to bring myself into my own somatic awareness, and the word soma just means the body. It's just, I think it's Greek, word for the body. So it's just being able to be in our felt sense. So to be able to feel our feet against the ground, to be able to know where we are in the environment that we're in, and to be able to have a felt sense of what is going on within our bodies, so be able to feel our breath. So bringing people into that state through the outside environment inwards, and orientation through the senses is one of the first practices, because it allows us to not overwhelm someone, to go straight in, closing the eyes, straight into the felt sense of the body, particularly for anyone that might have experienced trauma, which is true for many, many of us. So yeah, getting them to actually connect to the colours, the light, the textures, and actually allow that to land in their body, and just to notice any changes as they do that. So how do you feel when you look at the sky, when you see the clouds passing? Just taking a moment to see how that feels. How does it land in your body? What changes? Does your breath change? Do you notice any change in your muscle? So really allowing people to get into that felt sense through their senses, allowing them to experience the environment through the senses. And then I offer some meditation practices, as we go along as well. So once people are feeling settled and, in that rest digest, in that safe state, then if they feel comfortable to close the eyes, we may sit down on the ground, and we may bring our attention more towards the breath and just notice how the breath moves in the body. And that can be a real source of comfort for people, to know that they've got somewhere to come back to, particularly if they're feeling overwhelmed and with their emotions. And it's giving them options of places that they can rest their attention should they need to, regulate again, and in a way, if they are feeling overwhelmed. So yeah, orientation out of the senses, bringing what's been in contact with our body, bringing our attention towards the breath, and also into listening, into conversation as well. So if they choose to walk with a partner, just knowing that they don't have to offer any advice or any suggestion, that their presence is actually all that the other person needs. So it's almost giving them a role as well, to feel like they're a contribution to somebody else, and sort of facilitating that connection that we're talking about. I think everything in the sessions is aimed to allow people to connect to themselves, to connect to the environment, and to connect to each other. And that then creates a whole body experience, an embodied experience.
I believe it's so important for us to get out of our heads and into our bodies, particularly when so many of us are spending so much time sat down online, attached to a computer, and we kind of always get disconnected, disassociated with our bodies. So how do we really land back into that and have that full embodied lived experience? So thank you for sharing those different techniques. So moving forward to the future, where do you see your business going? How is it going to evolve?
So at the moment, as I say, I'm offering the grief walks, and they are monthly. And I want to continue with my one-to-one coaching, which isn't always focused on grief, can be around other things as well. But I put together a Grief in Nature program, which can be accessed online. And I'm playing with some ideas around how that could work. So obviously I'm in Cardiff, and people that are able to come to the grief walks are local to Cardiff, but it would be nice to make it accessible to people that are not local to me. So yeah, I can see that happening by maybe having, several weeks online and sharing some of the practices in the group session, and then giving people some life practice, some home practice to take away with them to try in between the sessions, and then come back together. So recorded some audios, maybe some videos that people can watch. I've got an idea of little sort of packages I could send to people so that they've all got materials that they can use, and having that group experience that they can take outside of the session, and as I say, practice it out in their own environments as well. So yeah, the Grief in Nature program, I see that as being that space where we're reminded that we're meant to be together in community. We're meant to come together in circle to share our grief.
It's a sign of our world and our times, isn't it, that we're all, as individuals with our own businesses, how can we evolve into the world of online, and how can we, make it or enable people to access outdoor coaching when we're not necessarily together. And I think COVID is an awful experience, but some of the things that have come out of it have actually been quite transformational, in the sense that people are realizing, you can do outdoor coaching without being next to each other physically in the same environment and space, but you can still share that with, people who are all over the world. They can be in their natural environment and you can be in yours, whether it's, on the phone or using Zoom or whatever it might be. And I think people are realizing that, the world is literally open. We can step outside. Unfortunately, I was wanting to be outside today, but it's raining, and that is annoying with technology sometimes. But stepping outside when it's raining, when it's sunny, when it's windy, whatever it might be, we can share that experience without necessarily having to be physically in the same environment. And I think that's really interesting. And the other element as well, I guess, is, what are your thoughts on the people bringing the outdoors indoors? So if they can't get outside physically into the natural environment outdoors, what can they do to kind of bring some of that indoors so that they can experience some of those connections whilst being inside, if they can't get outside?
Yeah, I mean, we can create a little space in our home, really. We can create like, a corner of a room or an altar or something where we can bring whatever's in season outside in, plants. We can obviously light like candles. Also, I was just thinking, the thing that came to me is when you're saying about being outdoors in the rain, I know that many of us do this already, but having cold showers or having the water on our bodies and reminding ourselves of that sensation of, that we can be in the elements even if we can't be outside. I mean, I was saying to you before we started recording, I go down to the sea and I get in the sea, and I'm not a big swimmer or anything, but I just love the feeling of the cold. You know, it literally reminds me that I'm alive, you know, and it does like really activate me. So yeah, cold showers, bringing in things from the outdoors, opening a window. I find even, you know, I mean, you can get bird song, you know, online anywhere now, can't you? You know, you can just have recordings of bird song. So just, yeah, just listening to anything. If you've got pets, if you've got animals, you know, they're part of nature with us as well, aren't they? So yeah, just creating a space for yourself with bringing things indoors even.
I like that about bird song, because to me, a lot of places now have double glazing, don't they? And it kind of mutes the outdoors. And I know
Mm,
people do that for a reason, but for me, it's like, no, open the windows. You know, I'll have the heating on or the fire burning, but I'll still have the window open because I want to be able to hear
yeah.
nature. And you know, there is
Mm,
research into the benefits of bird song and how it opens up, you know, parts of the brain and restores attention, and it is a very restorative sound, and things like that I think are great. So starting to wrap it up a little bit now, what would you say to a budding coach who wants to take their coaching practice outdoors? What sort of words of advice or encouragement would you give to somebody who's thinking that this is, you know, maybe their next step?
yeah, I think first of all, it's getting to know how does it benefit you, you know, having like that real experience for yourself, isn't it? Obviously, if someone's thinking of taking their coaching outdoors, they probably is because they enjoy it or they've experienced it, or you know, they love being outdoors in some way. So yeah, getting really into that, you know, really enjoying it for yourself first and having that experience for you. Um, and then finding places where you feel at ease, finding places that you enjoy walking or being. You know, for me, I'm not you know, I'm not really classic outdoorsy. One of my friends, she's a forest school teacher, you know, she builds fires, you know, she can climb trees and stuff. I'm not really that outdoorsy. I just love the experience of being outside. So, you know, however it is for you, I don't take people, I haven't got a qualification to take people hiking or anything on mountain, you know, I go to very sort of safe spaces. So finding places where you feel like you know, where you can be at your best, because you are you know, you are the presence, aren't you, for that person. I think everything is about us as practitioners feeling feeling regulated and safe to be that presence for the people that we're with. So yeah, find where you're comfortable outdoors, and then maybe start trying it out, you know, with people that you know, or maybe, you know, current clients or somebody that would be up for it, and just experiment with it really, and try things out. Yeah.
And if you were to recommend any resources to anybody, whether that is wanting to take their practice outdoors and partner with nature, or from more of a grief specific topic, what would they be?
Yeah, so the grief circles that I was talking about, that is with the Grief Space. It's Nikki Harrison. She's a grief tending facilitator, and she holds grief circles online, but she's also got some in-person events coming up. She runs retreats and things, you know, that are outside as well. There's a book that sort of has really influenced the stuff that I do. It's called The Wild Edge of Sorrow by Frances Weller. So Frances Weller is a, you know, grief tending facilitator and has lots of practices and rituals for that. Another book that I thought I'd bring when I talked about, you know, regulating our nervous system is, you know, polyvagal exercises by Deb Dana. So you can look anything up around polyvagal theory and yeah, how we regulate our nervous system. What else? And there's grieftending.org. Sophie Banks. She runs lots of yeah, circles and and resources for grief tending as well. So yeah, those would be my resources to share.
They're really great, actually, and I'm going to look at that first book you showed there, the Edge of Sorrow. I think a lot of our listeners just love. We've got a resource page on our website, and there's something for everybody on there, whether it's something to read, something to listen to, something to watch, something to a practice to learn and take away and try for yourself. So, and those are great because we don't have any of those suggestions so far. Sometimes people suggest things other people have suggested, we're like, that's great. But anything new is wonderful for people to, especially in these kind of niche areas. You've shared so much with us about your practice and how your personal experience has helped you to kind of develop the business that you're in, and make it, as you said, quite a personal thing for you, but to be able to support others find their path. And I like what you said right at the start. It's not about offering advice, it's about enabling somebody to find what works for them and how they connect with themselves and nature. And we've talked about this before, that it's so important for us as coaches to know what it is about ourselves, and to know how we connect with nature and why we connect with nature in the way we do personally. And the more we can have that knowledge of ourselves, then obviously we can support others to find that for themselves as well. So I think it's really great that you brought that up, because that to us is a key message. Go out and really kind of think to yourself, what am I feeling, why am I feeling this, what's my personal connection with the natural world.
Yeah.
Leah, where would people find you if they wanted to connect with you after watching or listening to this podcast? And what are your what's the best way people can get hold of you? Do you have a website? Do you have LinkedIn, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, the first place is my website, and that's leahshawndavis.co.uk. The only social media I use is Instagram, and that's Leah Shawn Davis. And I also write a blog and newsletter on Substack as well. So yeah, you can find me, Leah Shawn Davis, everywhere.
Perfect.
Thank you for that, and we will very much get that popped on your episode page on the website as well. So thank you so much for joining us today and really giving us a raw and honest overview of your story and what has really prompted you to move towards this, and also some really practical, tangible tools as well to take away. And it's that blend of personal experience and then the practicalities that really enables people to then go away and have that reflection back to themselves and help shape the decisions and choices that they take with their coaching moving forward. So I hope this episode has really inspired, and I'm sure undoubtedly that it will have. And if you're listening in, we'd love to know your thoughts as ever. What's really resonated with you? What are your key takeaways? Please do let us know. If you're a part of our LinkedIn community, feel free to drop us a message or a line in there, or reach out ultimately through the website as well. But Leah, thank you so much for joining us. Listeners, thank you so much for taking the time to listen in. As ever, if this is your first time, welcome to the Coaching Outdoors community. And we have got an absolute treasure trove for you to explore, going back over 7 series where we have got over 60 episodes waiting for you to discover. And if you have an idea of someone who we've not interviewed yet and you'd love to see featured, again, please do let us know. We are always on the hunt for finding out more coaches who are doing amazing work around the world outdoors, partnering with nature in a variety of different ways. So please do get in touch. And we would also love to also share, if you haven't heard already, about our in-person face-to-face event, which is happening in July 2024. So if you're listening before July 2024, please do check out the event page, get a ticket, come along, and you'll get to meet a number of our amazing guests that we've had in person doing their work, facilitating experiential workshops, all set in the stunning get-arounds of Henley Business School. So it is going to be a dream come true. So please do come along. So other than that, thank you for taking the time. Have an amazing day wherever you are, and look forward to joining you again for another episode of Coaching Outdoors in the future.
So if you enjoyed what you've heard,
Like it
share across your network.
and subscribe to our YouTube channel and LinkedIn community page, the Coaching Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks so much in advance for your support.